Hello and welcome to the Bookish Rambles Podcast with me, Holly.
I'm me, Becky.
And I'm Samantha Kramer. I'm from Charleston, South Carolina, and I'm the author of The London Week.
We both have read your book that we're talking about. But obviously for any viewers who are not familiar and would like to check it out before they watch the rest of this episode, would you like to talk about what your book is?
Sure. So just to give the quick spiel on it, it takes place in my character Olivia's freshman year of college, and she's from Massachusetts, kind of has her life all planned out. That she's going to take home, to meet her family and friends, and life doesn't really go planned for her. She ends up getting the opportunity, kind of against her will, to complete her first year of college abroad in London at the school that she gets into, their partner university, and it's a full scholarship, so she kind of has no choice but to take it, and she's just kind of wanting to put in her time in London and get back to her life back at home, but along the way, she ends up learning that this change doesn't have to be a bad thing. She meets friends there and falls in love and all of that good stuff that comes with being 18 and starting college.
First of all, I guess a huge part of the story, and one of the characters really, is London. It's the actual city, the this place with the whole purpose of it really is coming to love this place, this city. And you, am I correct in saying that you live in London, or you?
So I did a short study abroad in London back in between my junior and senior year of college. I was only there for a month, so unlike Olivia, who's there for the whole year, I just had a summer experience. And I came to really fall in love with London. It's probably my favorite city in the world. I just felt so happy there. And I've been lucky enough to go back and visit 2 times since my study abroad. So it's just a very special place to me, and it was so much fun writing the book and kind of getting to revisit some of my favorite spots during the writing process.
It is quite interesting though, because you do talk about a few different places in the city, and I'll be honest, I think we've spoken about this before, me and Becky, but I'm not a huge fan of London. But the book was making me think well, maybe I could go and visit these locations, maybe I could go and sit on a hill and have a picnic and try and see the animals in the zoo. The atmosphere that was created of the city, and from the perspective of somebody who is not loving it to begin with, even, I think that you really transitioned it well as somebody who also doesn't like London. I could relate to the being oh my god, this is all. And I think a funnier part of this is that not only do I not love London, I'm from Liverpool.
Which is also
Yeah.
The opposite of the love interest. Yeah. So it was really interesting because I guess for me, as somebody who doesn't love the city, the reason why I don't love it is because it's so busy. And I think one thing that you did quite early on was you had to have what I would describe as a panic attack, where she kind of is in the middle of this very tourist heavy area. I think it's by Parliament. So it's obviously one of the most famous landmarks in the world, let alone in the city. But it's one of those things where she's staring at the ground because she's overwhelmed, and she's lost sight of the only person who knows the way around. And the way that was managed felt very realistic to me, and it felt like a very natural way for them to start seeing each other as less than the slightly annoying person that they were supposed to be working with, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of use that scene to be the pivotal moment where it's the opportunity for Olivia to explain, I don't really want to be here, and I didn't want to come here, and I don't want to stay here. And that in turn kind of opens up something inside of Finn to see like, oh, like maybe I'm not so alone in my feelings too. And that's kind of where that shift kind of happens for both of them in their minds.
Yeah. And as well, like, I think that technically I'm now also a romance writer, but Becky is actually like going to become a published author of a romance. And
so exciting.
Yeah, in September.
Yay, that's so exciting.
So
I know. Yeah, I quite like romance books, so I will admit, I did stay up past like what is reasonable for reading a book. I think I stayed up till 2 a.m. reading it because I was really invested in this story, actually.
Oh, that's so exciting to hear. Hey, that makes me feel so good.
I think I did very similar. I didn't stay up quite so much because this has been a discussion on at least a few episodes now. My sleep schedule is still a mess. So I'm trying my best to not mess it up any further. I'm being very strict, but I finished a day ahead of schedule, which I think meant I finished it in 3 days.
Wow.
So, and like this, it's been a busy reading week for me. I've had about 5 books that needed finishing before June, basically. So I got it done, in very few sittings, and whilst also putting off reading other stuff. So you have done a very good job, especially because weirdly enough, I'm not a huge romance reader, which is why I mentioned Becky, because I feel like we have an opportunity to talk about some of the romance specific stuff and the way that you wrote it as a writer of romance. Because it is one of those genres that, you know, people can be very picky with their romance.
Yes, and I will say I'm an extremely picky romance reader. Like, I have certain things I look for, and if it doesn't have what I want to read, I'm like, I just don't know if I'll be into it. And I think I've gotten more picky as I've started writing more too.
Because when you write as well, you learn how to do stuff well and how to do stuff badly.
I was just going to say, I think, like, I don't know if you guys have this problem too, being that you write as well, that I feel like, especially when I was so deep in writing, that I would just read other books that I'd have a hard time getting into the story because I'd be looking at every single thing, like, well, how did they describe that scene? Like, what could I learn from this? How did they format the page? They're like, oh my gosh, just get invested in the story. Like, turn off the writer brain and read the book.
Yeah, and then you find a romance that sucks you in, and it's like, oh, hello.
Yes, and I'm like, how did they do all that? Like, what can I take away from this? Like, how did they make me that invested in it? How can I do that in my writing? Which can be a good thing too. I feel like I learned a lot from reading.
Yeah, it's a gift and a curse to be able to read things with a writer's mind, I think.
Yes, 100%.
But I mean, you don't have like rivals to lovers or anything, but you have, I guess it would be described kind of like grumpy sunshine, but at the same time, they're also kind of both a bit grumpy.
I was going to say. Like, they're both kind of grumpy and miserable in their own ways in the beginning.
Yeah. For different reasons, but also sort of similar reasons, which is very interesting because you make them similar enough that they have common ground, but different enough that they still don't see eye to eye, and that she sort of sees his way of being as slightly disinterested and rude, perhaps. You know, like, oh, why is he doing homework at a table full of his friends who are having a conversation, you know? But
right. And I think this goes to show too that we never know what everyone else is going through, and people's actions that might seem rude or disinterested or strange to us, like, there might be an underlying reason for that, and we just don't know until we truly get to know them.
And this is one thing that I did want to say as well, is that I don't know how much of a spoiler this is, so I'm going to let Becky talk about this. The thing is, I don't know if this is a spoiler, but you both have characters dealing with grief.
It's not a spoiler. It's kind of hinted at in the third chapter of the book. Yeah, say because obviously grief's a big thing, and obviously people grieve in different ways. Because I will say our characters are very similar to how they deal with, like, they kind of close themselves off, and yeah, it's just fascinating how. I will say, because I wanted to talk about this, we were talking about this last week, how Finn isn't a toxic male lead. He is actually being manipulated by his ex-girlfriends. And I'm glad that we're seeing more of, like, males being represented like that, and especially in young adult, because it feels like all the young adult books have all the same archetype of males.
The job
so it was
who hates everyone.
Yeah, so it was nice to see something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, where it just goes to show that, like, no one's perfect. People are dealing with everything. And, I mean, Finn is a troubled character. He doesn't know when he should let go of his girlfriend. He doesn't want to let go of this failing relationship. That I kind of feel like everyone else can see that, like, this is not good for you, but also you kind of have to be the one to figure that out for yourself. And that's what I wanted to show, is that Finn comes to that realization that it's not someone else telling him, it's ultimately him, where he's like, no, this is what's best for me. And it definitely takes time.
Yeah, but it's natural that it does. And I feel like, the story, something that I do really like is that it takes place across the year. Because I feel like one of the biggest complaints about romance is when it takes place across, like, 2 weeks, and you're just like, there's no way.
Right.
Like, this character would not be opening up within a week of knowing this other character. Like, there's just no way. And so you read something that's got an actually reasonable time scale, and, there's personal growth, but it makes sense that there's personal growth because it's been a year, and it's been a year at university, which, I mean, we've all been to university. I feel like we've all probably experienced how much life changes within a year especially while you're at university and you're living away from home and working away from home. And basically, for the first time, you have your own time and your own schedule, and everything's a bit different and weird, and you've got to figure out what it's like to be an adult for the first time.
Exactly. That 18, 19 age range is just it's a fun and an interesting time in your life where you have that freedom, but you're also trying to figure out, like, who you are as a person.
Exactly.
And especially, like, for Olivia, who's somewhere that she did not plan to be. It's a foreign country for her. It's different. And even though it's the same language, things are different. The culture is different. So, like, added that into it, it's just a fun time figuring everything out.
Yeah. I mean, it really, I think the thing especially with the culture thing, is, like, the UK is one of those places where if you went to a different place in the UK, there's a different culture. There's different words, there's different traditions. To come in as someone who wasn't raised here, it's very difficult, especially for Americans, I'll say. I feel like, in my experience, a lot of people make fun of Americans in the UK, which is not always, like, a mean-tempered thing, but it's just like, there's always been that sort of relationship between the two countries. To move that far away and to a country that is trying to retain its, like, history in a lot of ways, like, through its language, which is at times confusing, it really was easy to believe that she would feel isolated. And especially when the whole stuff with her friends back home starts happening, where she isn't really talking to them anymore and she's feeling that she's being replaced. It just is so, like, you feel for her. And especially because, I mean, obviously you've been abroad, even if it was for less time. Your friendships do kind of change. Like, people go away to a different university even though it's in the same country, even if it's an hour away. And it's like all of a sudden by the time that you see them again, they're a completely different person.
Exactly, and that's kind of what inspired me to originally write this story. It wasn't so much the going away. I was lucky enough that my core group of friends from high school, we all pretty much went to college together. But it wasn't until after we graduated college and all got jobs and moved to different places that that's where I almost started to notice, like, oh, I only get to see these people once a year now, and they've changed and I've changed, and we're not around each other every single day, knowing what's going on in each other's lives. And that's what kind of inspired me to go off of like those feelings of, well, everything's different now. And that's kind of what led to this story. But then I just did it during college because I figured that's where a lot of people experience those types of changes too, and the moving to different places, and especially when you're young and figuring out yourself, and who you saw in high school is different in college. And
yeah,
I feel like I'm rambling. So like cut that.
yeah, no, it's such a volatile time for people, because as well, especially like in a place like London, you're exposed to people from all over the world anyway. I think it is especially interesting because she mentions at the end of it that like she feels different than the tourists, and that's before she's officially decided, I think, to stay, because we do spoil, so but yeah, she decides to stay. But also before that, it becomes very obvious that she likes her time there and that she finds this city to be quite beautiful and interesting, and that when she sees these tourists who have no idea what they're doing, she's like, oh, imagine being like that. But she used to be like that, you know?
Right, and that's where I wanted to show her growth too, that like in the beginning she's like, this place is overwhelming, I hate it here. Like, I mean, she already kind of hated it before she even went and gave it a shot, but it just amplifies. I mean, she comes from a smaller town and all of a sudden she's in this big city where there's people everywhere, to eventually seeing like, no, I can see myself staying here and this is where I'm meant to be, even if it's not what I thought in the beginning.
Yeah. I do think that there's like a thing to that where I don't know about any of you. I've definitely had experiences where I've gone somewhere and I thought I was going to hate it, and then I've loved it. And there's like so many places as well that I thought that I was going to love that I ended up not liking at all. And I feel like you see sometimes in books where people experience stuff like that, but you don't really see it on this scale where it's like you're completely cut off from your life. You have no way home really, because it would cost a lot of money, it'd be very impractical. You know, she's kind of forced into it. Well, she is forced into it. It was that or not go to university for free. But like I think that there really is that real feeling to it of just knowing sometimes that you have to do something hard, and then it turning out that actually, what do you know, the hard thing was the good thing. I feel, do you know what, it's the same with writing a book. Sometimes you start writing a book and you think, oh, this is terrible, this is like the worst thing I've ever written in my life, and then you get a little bit further in.
And it's like, oh, it's the best thing. And then like people read it and you're like, oh wait, I actually have something here. Yeah. Maybe I'm not as terrible as I thought I was.
I feel like,
right, you almost have to see the process through and put in the hard work, and it's not an easy process. Like, you have to be dedicated and see, like, you have to, I don't know.
No, I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah, it's important to put that effort in, and I think that applies to everything. And you know, she didn't start seeing the results until she actually like let this have a chance and was making friends with these people and saying, you know what, like, I might not be here for very long, but I might as well just treat them like they're my friends forever anyway. And treat the city like, because I live here. Like, I'm not going to suddenly stop living here just because I don't use the tube except to get to class. Like, I think it's a really interesting thing. And something that I liked as well is the little references to things that we hadn't seen, like a restaurant that she goes to with a friend, which we didn't see. And so it's like how she's talking about how she misses these little things, because it's like the sense of time passing is very real. We learn that, yeah, she has spent a year in this city, slowly but surely expanding her understanding. And the fact that she, is afraid of going to the museum alone, and then she ends up just having missed a class or something because she's been around these museums. Like, she's been out all day at museums by herself later on. Like, you really get that sense of the growth, not just because of the actions, but because of the sort of casualness within the text of referring to these little moments and these little things that we've had seen made as like a significant mark of how afraid she was and of how alone she felt. And then without even having to, show us her doing these things, it's just like, yeah, she did them. Because those huge things that feel like monumental, they do start to just feel like, oh yeah, sure. And it's one of these things, like, you don't expect it. You don't expect, when you're in that sort of situation where this change is so new, to ever feel like it's just another part of your day. But it does.
Right. I think it's so hard to see in the moment too, especially when it's something that feels so terrible in the beginning, to see like, how will this ever be good? Because I've had situations in my own life where things have changed and I'm like, this is the worst thing ever. And now looking back, I can see, like, if it hadn't been for that change, I wouldn't be where I am now. Like, it wouldn't have led to all this good. And I almost started to see that more in my life, like, as I was working on this book, which was kind of cool that I was working on a book about change, and it was almost teaching me to notice the changes in my own life. And I was like, wait a second, like, this doesn't have to be bad. Let me find all the good from this. So that was kind of a cool reminder and lesson for myself.
Yeah, it is interesting how, because I guess it's introspection, isn't it? It's like we're writing a book, but we're forced to look inside our own brains for information that we don't even know that we have. And then all of a sudden, we're like, wait, that's a really good point that I just made.
Right. Because I actually wrote the first draft of this book back in like 2019 and then just ignored it for, I guess, a couple years because I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know how to edit. I didn't know what came next. I knew how to write a first draft and then I didn't know what to do from there. And it wasn't until like last year that I was kind of like, well, what am I doing? I have this story that I don't hate. It's not perfect, but I don't hate it. And that's when I really started like seriously working on it and figuring out what do I need to do to make it a book. And so it was kind of cool, like seeing the words I had written years ago being so relevant to where I was in my life at the time too, that I was like, this is all like perfect timing that I wrote this story a while ago and it's helping me now.
It is quite special, I think. Was this your first book then? Or was it a second book?
Yeah, so this is my first book that I've taken through the whole process and published. I've written like drafts of books before, but nothing that I ever like really was dedicated to than I was with this one. I mean, I was writing back when I was like 15, doing books that I had no direction with. Those will never see the light of day. I can't even like read them because they're just a mess. I'm glad that I did that back like when I was younger, because I really do think back to like the books I wrote when I was 15, 16, and that's like the motivation I need to be like, if I could do that as a kid, like with a full course load and everything, I can do it now.
Yeah. And I do think it's really interesting that then this is like the first book that you've seen fully through, and it's a book that is about change. And I guess writing as a whole, it's something that you need to be willing to change, especially for the editing process. I mean, I can't even imagine how it must have looked as a first draft compared to the final version. And it's you have to let go. I guess again that comes back to the themes of grief, where you have to learn to say goodbye to things that you love about your book in order to make it better. He had to let go of his girlfriend, who he thought made him better, who he thought was like somebody that he could trust in a way that he couldn't really trust anybody else and open up to. And I think it's really interesting that, you wrote a book with those sorts of ideas while going through that process for yourself in a very different way, but
Yeah, and I do, circling back to what you said earlier, where it's like you find pieces of yourself during writing. And I think it wasn't until like I was almost finished up with it, like on the final draft, where I would almost like catch myself throughout my day and be like, I'm kind of like handling that the way that like this character would. I'm like, is there a piece of me in them that I didn't even realize?
Oh, and that's such a fun.
I mean, not saying that I am the characters, that they are different than me and everything, but I do think there are little bits and pieces of how they process things that I do catch being little bits of myself.
Yeah. I mean, I fully I've only written 2 books in my lifetime, which is kind of weird, to be honest, because of how many ideas I've had. But I think that so far there is a little piece of me in like most of my characters, if not all of them. And I do think it's really like, I have become more confident since writing a character who in some ways is like me, but like a cooler version of me. And it's not like I made them me on purpose, but I feel like when you write a character, it's always gonna have like your reasoning, perhaps, because otherwise how would you come up with it? So it is fun that you've, I guess, started to feel your characters in you every time you have a thought or do something. And especially with a book like this one, where like you must have such a good relationship with change now in general.
It's a little, I have never liked change, and that's just something I know about myself, that I am very resistant to all types of change. I mean, I even remember being a kid and my parents decided to repaint the house a different color, and that rocked my world. I was like, this is the worst thing happening in my life. They did just repaint their house a different color recently, and I did not mind. So growth, I guess. But yeah, I'm very comfortable in how things are. I don't want anything to change, but I think I do see more now that like things are never going to stay exactly how they are, especially like in adulthood. People are constantly moving, coming in and out of your life. Friends get busy, like friendships change, your life changes, the structure of everything. Like change is just inevitable. And I do feel like working on the London Loop gives me a sense of comfort with that. I do think I also will be very resistant to change always. But I do also feel a little bit like I've seen some really, really good things come from big changes in my life. And honestly, I was going through a really big change in my life right before I started working on this book. And it was because of that change that kind of pushed me to work on a book. And I do feel like if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be where I am now. So that's been my big thing, where it's like, so just to give some background, I was just going through a really big change with a friendship, and it just felt like this friendship was falling apart, and I didn't know what my life was going to look like. It just felt horrible. And that's what led me to start working on my book, just to focus on something else. And I'm like, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, especially with stuff like that where it's obviously, I mean, you discuss that in the book. You know, there's the friendships with her friends from home, which are like the most important part of her life at that point, because as you said, she's from a small town. She hasn't really had that much life experience. Was that her first time? Am I misremembering, or was that her first time like abroad? Did she have to get a passport and stuff? I can't remember. My brain.
I don't think I explicitly say, but yeah, that was pretty much her first time, like going abroad, being away from family and everything.
Yeah, it's a huge change, but especially like friendships. I feel like, especially in my own life, like I love my family and I need them, support wise, but I feel like friendships are the ones that keep you sane. Like your family keep you alive, your friends keep you happy. Because without your friendships, there are like some things that you just can't talk about with your family. Whether it's like, because sometimes, especially like parents, they're a bit old sometimes. And so they don't quite understand, the jokes and the stories that you tell. And I think like friendships, especially that you've had since you were a child, there's a level of innate trust between you, where it's like, yeah, I've known you since we were old enough to like have baths together, for example. I'm not gonna think that you have gone out behind my back and tried to hurt me, like, and suddenly she's thinking that maybe they are doing stuff to hurt her, not necessarily purposefully, but in a way that like, she can't fix. She's so far away, and you really feel that. I guess as someone who's like obviously lost friendships before, including ones that did mean a lot to me, it's very difficult to imagine being in her position and losing them almost while being so far away and, in a different time zone where you can't just call them up because every time you do that, they're busy. And to basically feel like there's no closure there, because that's what it is, she feels like, oh, they're changing, they're growing. Everyone's telling me that it's different between people when you've been away from them for more than a few months. But what can I do about it? And it's just this helplessness. And they're like, to me, like there's this relationship between her and Finn where he represents the exact opposite of that, where it's like, if you are so worried about losing these people who are already lost, you lose out on the people that you're now getting to know for the first time. And like, you can be friends with people for a year and them still not even know about the trouble that you've experienced and the relationships that you have with your family. Meanwhile, the person that you're clinging to is somebody who you've outgrown, like it.
Right.
Relationships were good, is what I'm saying. Very long-winded way of saying, but yeah.
They felt very realistic.
Yes.
But that's just how life is. Like, there's sometimes you outgrow friendships, and it can be hard to let go of people that were once someone who was very important in your life. And I think we see that with Finn, even though that's like a relationship and not the same as a friendship, but it's still something he struggled to let go of. And Olivia struggles with the fact that her friends are changing, but so is she at the same time. And I mean, even with our own like long distance friendships, it is a work that you have to put into, that it's not impossible that you grow apart just because of distance, but it is definitely something that has to be a two-way street where both people are putting in effort to maintain that.
Yeah.
And hopefully she's able to do that in her next year there, and the friends are able to keep in touch as well.
Well, I thought actually as well, it was really nice that she called to just say like, look, we haven't really been speaking. it's been kind of awkward, and it felt like maybe you were moving on, but you didn't want to tell me about it. But I've also like not been telling you that that's how I'm feeling. Like, they have a full conversation about it where they are like, you know what? Yeah, I'm still your friend. And I thought that was really nice that, you know, you didn't, again, because this is like the thing with the boyfriend being not an awful person for once. I think it's really nice when you don't portray the change as like, these people suck, but this person's great. Like, you can move forward without it necessarily meaning that you have to sever the older friendships completely. Like, you can acknowledge that they're different, but that they still exist.
And that they're still their own person, because they're more three-dimensional, aren't they?
Exactly. And I think it was really nice that you did that, especially because obviously she does still have family in America. And while she may end up permanently living in London or whatever, who knows, depending on, you know, how her life goes, there's always going to be that connection to her family who don't live outside of, I mean, I don't know what's, obviously, again, the future is unknown. That's like a huge point. But the fact is that if you know that you're going to have people in a life at home always, it's good to know that, and to just say, you know what, look, even if we're not best friends in the way that we used to be, we still get along. Why would we not see each other when we're in the same place? Especially if we're going to be up for months, because like summer holidays as well are quite, I'm trying to remember, I think they're like 3-4 months usually. I
think it depends on the university.
Yeah, it was.
And what subject you're studying.
For me, it's always long enough to just drive me to the point of boredom. So I feel like if you didn't have any friends to hang out with during the holidays, you would literally go insane. Which is, again, it's the thing. It's like you have to sometimes lean on your friends to make sure that your well-being is good. And she learns to do that on both sides of the pond, shall we say.
Exactly. She ends up with this core group of friends in London who are good people, care about her, are consistent, showing up, while also still maintaining her core best friends back at home. And like you said, even though things look different, like she's not going to be with them all the time. She's got her friends over in London. They've got their friends in Boston. They're still putting in that effort, and they're still going to be in each other's lives, even though the friendship looks different. And that's kind of what growing up and growing into adulthood is. I mean, like, my best friend and I live 4 hours apart, and we used to see each other all the time, and it's just different now. But we put in that mutual effort to still see each other when we can, or do phone calls. And I kind of feel like friendships that matter just evolve in different ways and are still there.
Yeah. It is like a very real, especially because I feel like the age of the book and the characters, for example, there are going to be people who read this who maybe are going abroad for university for the first time. Like, they're going to even it's the same country, like, especially Americans. I'm assuming Americans are your primary audience because obviously you are American. But I feel like in the UK, I think the furthest away that you can be in the same country is like 5 hours ish. Like, it's not that far, and that's by car. It's a bit quicker by train usually. But
is it 5 hours or is it 6?
It's not that far, considering that I've seen people in America who are like, yeah, I'm going to get on a 5-hour flight to the other side of the country. Oh. And it's like, that's a flight. So...
Yeah, I mean, even just going, like, to a different school whenever you turn 18, even going to a different school, like, in-state can still be wildly different if you're going to a completely different end of the state, or if you're in, like, a big state, too.
See, that's crazy.
But yeah, even just out of state, like, just going off to college is just, it just feels so different. I mean, it's your first real taste of freedom and being on your own.
It feels like a really good book for people experiencing that, and not just for those people, but like there are a lot of books about university, and some of them deal with change, but most of them deal with, in my experience, like drama rather than change. Whereas what you've got is like a person who just doesn't want to be where they are, and who feels like her life is being ruined by her being there.
And I think that her feelings are so real for so many college freshmen, and it's not always talked about. I mean, I remember the narrative that was always told to me right before I was going to college, like, oh, these are going to be the best 4 years of your life. And there's so much pressure that, like, this time is supposed to be great and wonderful, and, like, you're never going to get that back. And it's not always the best 4 years. And I think when it doesn't instantly feel like, oh, this is some amazing thing that everyone talks about, it's like, well, why? Like, what am I doing wrong? And I don't think that's talked about enough, that, like, college isn't always this perfect thing, and it's okay if you don't instantly love it, and it's okay if you have to transfer or go to a different school or figure yourself out. And also, I don't always agree that it's the best 4 years of your life, because then what about the rest of your life? Like, there's been so many good things to come after that.
Yeah,
but I almost don't like that narrative. Yeah. I don't like that narrative to, like, this is it. It doesn't get much better from here.
It is really, especially because, like, it puts so much pressure on going in the first place. And I think, like, because in the UK as well, we have Freshers Week, which is where you basically hang out with a bunch of people who are new to the school. And so that's good.
And then never speak to them again.
But yeah, again, like, there are people who...
In my case.
Like, so many people on... My university has, like, an anonymous admissions thing. It's, like, pretty popular, you know what I mean? But it... Like, we have one for my university specifically, and there are so many people who are like, how do I make friends? I've been here for months. There are people online who are like, how are you guys making friends as an adult, as somebody at university, as somebody? And, like, it is really tough. And it is something that can make you feel really alone and really like, is this the right thing for me? Do I maybe need to give up this whole thing and just go back home where I know I'm safe? And, like, she goes through that realization, Olivia, where she's like, you know what, I've not been giving it a chance, and I'm stuck here, basically. So let's give it a go. And that's when it starts to get better. And I think a lot of people, they do struggle, and obviously it's not always something that you can fix in terms of struggling, but a lot of people struggle, I think, because they're afraid of putting themselves out there or for looking stupid, and going up to people that they don't know and being like, hey, that's a cool bag or something, and, like, having a conversation.
I think it depends on who you click with as well. For example, like, some people, on my, like, previous university a couple of years ago, like, there's just some people I just did not click with. But then I've got a friend that I've been friends with for almost 10 years now. You just click with certain people. It's like you and I, Holly. We just clicked.
Yeah. It's
amazing how...
it's amazing.
Yeah, it's just like...
And it's interesting, too, the people that you don't necessarily think that you would click with sometimes end up being the ones that you do. I mean, there's people that I keep in touch with that I'm like, I wouldn't have ever thought that this would be someone I would keep up with, but yet we do.
And you know what, as well?
And it's just funny how it all works out.
Because, as well, this, like, it just occurred to me. I mean, I knew it, obviously, while I was reading, but she's a year younger. She's living in a house full of people in their second year, and these people have all known each other for a year, but she fits. You know, this isn't like she's made a friend group from the ground up. She's found people that she likes, and they've made their friendship work. Like, almost as if they were waiting for her without realizing it, which is how it sometimes is. Like, you sometimes meet people who've been friends for a really long time, but you fit in the group because you all get along together. And it's okay to be intimidated and to feel like maybe as she does in the beginning, where it's like, well, I don't know who any of these people are. I don't know what classes they've been going to. And like just sitting there quietly, like watching the world go by, but as part of this group that you've been very kindly invited to sit with. And then eventually it's like she's the one encouraging other people to join in the conversation. And it's like a very non-linear.
She plays matchmaker with the guy that, what's his name? It's lost.
Gabriel.
Yeah, so it's on the. I like that bit where he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm in a band." It was like it was just reminds me of that weird like older friend that you know that always says the most out of pocket thing.
Just like, okay, I guess you've had this hobby for a really long time that never heard of.
And he makes the frog noises in the back of class.
Honestly, I loved how like it showed that you don't have to make friends in the way that is often shown. Like you don't get thrown together for your first class ever with these people and then all of a sudden you're all best friends. It's like sometimes you make do and then making do becomes like the best thing ever.
Yeah, because she really only sees them as just temporary friends in the beginning. Like, all right, here's some people to sit with, help me get to class, like whatever, I'm not going to see them in a year. And then she ends up actually missing them when she's apart, where she's like, oh, dang, I actually like those people.
Like literally one of my closest friends is someone that I met in my first year, and we lived together in the same flat, and it was like, it's so weird how at the very beginning it was just like, this is someone who I'm going to be living with, this is someone that I don't know at all. This was necessarily going to be someone that I was going to be so close with. When you're in that situation, your main focus is on getting settled into this place, on figuring out how to get to class. And you don't necessarily expect that within a few months you're going to be sitting in one of your rooms, just having like the most deep conversation that you've ever had. And really like sharing stuff about yourself and about them, that it shows that like you have a bond that isn't just like, oh, we happen to live together. Like, you know what I mean? Like you have that where they obviously live together. Connection. I'm gonna let you two talk for a while and see if it just decides to fix itself. I'm gonna have a fiddle.
Because I had a couple of questions. So like, of course, obviously the title, The London Leap. Was it hard to come up with the title?
It was so hard to come up with the title. I mean, that's like part of what kind of delayed me publishing it, because I didn't know what it was called. And I kind of needed to have a title to go on the cover. And I just was trying to figure out, I had literally had like a notes app list with all these titles I was trying to come up with, and nothing felt quite right. And I thought like I wanted to have something kind of with change, but then I also felt like it was important to have London somewhere in the title, since that's such a big part of the story. And so I was like, okay, like London something, and that's kind of where I was thinking, like, okay, if I could find some sort of alliteration, that would work. And eventually landed on The London Leap, and was like, okay, I'm happy with that. That works. Like that kind of fits. Where it's like you have to make that leap into this new situation. She kind of makes the leap of saying, this is the place for me. And that's how we ended up where we are. I think I originally was calling it, when I was very first writing it, it was called Love in London. And I just did not feel like that worked, since love isn't the sole focus. It's like, that's not quite where I'm going. So I still kept the London part, but switched it up.
Yeah, I think it works really well, because I think the other title, because I suppose some people might, I bet you there's loads of books called Love in London.
Yeah.
So the other question I had was, well, you know how, because obviously you chose to self-publish this, did you ever consider doing traditional publishing, or was it always, I'm going to do indie from the get-go?
I had no idea. So when I first started working on it and really taking it seriously, it was kind of like a learning process from, okay, I have something written, now what? I was like, okay, I need to edit. How do I even do that? What do I focus on? how do I make this into a book? And I looked into both routes and was originally going to do traditional and kind of started researching how to query agents, all that. And then ended up deciding to switch to indie just because I had written this so long ago. I was kind of motivated and ready and wanted to get it out on my timeline, wanted to choose my people to work with. So I actually worked with a local editor and a local cover designer just because I felt like that was important to try to stay local and support people in my community, which I actually really loved that because I was able to form connections with my editor and my cover designer to really capture what I was going for. And I don't really have any regrets with the whole process. I mean, I've learned a lot for sure that will make the next round so much easier. This whole time was just a learning process.
I mean,
and I feel
a lot of that is very similar to Becky's reasons as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mentioned this last week. I decided to do trad pub because I thought that's the typical way. Let's go, and you just get rejected. And then I had an agent really interested, and then she gave me a personalized rejection. So it was like, right, okay. Then I was like, do you know what? I only queried 25 agents, so that it's not a lot. But I thought I don't want to sit here and just feel terrible in myself for just getting these emails, because I had a lot of quick responses. They were quick. I had one 3 days, but wow. I was like, oh yeah, I was like, okay, that was a bit quick. So I was just like, I want to take some matters into my own hands. I don't want to, because obviously yours has a core message. I think a lot of people's messages get taken out when it goes to trad, and it's like, I don't want the core message to be taken out. And I bet it might have been the same. They might have changed the whole dynamic of the characters and might have make it more marketable in trad terms. So I'm glad that you decided to go the indie route. And I think there's more power in indie publishing as well, especially with marketing platforms like TikTok now. You see the success of some self-published books, and it's like, wow, how on earth did that happen?
Right, and I think it's just a very empowering process just for the individual. Because going into it, I only just felt like a writer. And now, having gone through the whole process, I wore so many different hats in this process. I did a lot of the marketing. I kind of feel like I'm my own agent in a way where it's I had to find people to work with. I had to make my own website. And it just kind of makes you feel really proud of yourself to be I did all of this. I'm the one who made this happen. I mean, yes, you have the editor and the cover designer, but it's I picked those people. And I made sure I picked the ones that I wanted to work with and that I felt comfortable with. So it is really nice to I put in the work and I made it happen. And I think indie publishing, it doesn't always have the best
rep.
Yeah, but I feel if you do it well and if you put in the time and money needed to make it look well, it really can be just as good as a traditional book. And that was my whole goal going into it was, well, if I'm going to do it myself, I want to make sure I do it right. And I'm going to pay for the editor. I'm going to pay for the cover design because that's important.
Exactly. And I feel especially with Sabrina's book and your book, I have enjoyed them far more than I've actually enjoyed the traditionally published books that I've read. I'm not going to lie. That is the truth.
Yeah, you've had a shocking year.
Yeah, I haven't had a 5-star book read. I'd spoil it. I recently read Mexican Gothic and I gave it 3 stars, Holly, sorry. Wasn't terrible, but one more thing.
But
that's trad.
But the thing is as well, you have the author's dream where you get to pick your own cover.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was very important to me. And honestly, God bless my cover designer. He met with me as many times as I needed to make sure it was exactly as I wanted. I mean, he let me make as many revisions as needed to get it to what I had in mind, because I wish I had the skills to be an artist. I tried for about 1 minute to do my own cover and was like, okay, let's be real with myself. It'll suck if I do it. So it was hard trying to be no, this is what I have in mind. I mean, even down to Finn's hair, I was that's not the right color. Anyway, but I mean, he made it where I was this is exactly what I have in mind, and it's perfect.
Yeah, it's definitely nice because it obviously is like most people's first impression of the book. It's something that this is again, it's a thing with Tripod where so many covers just don't represent what the book is, and you see them and you're just like, why would you do that?
Yes, I've got a point, right? So I will say, like, I'm doing a master's degree in writing, and we've just finished our last module, which was like called Getting Published. So we had like author talks we had to go to, and there was an author who came in and she was talking about her book. So she's wrote a lot of like psychological thrillers. In one of her books is set in Wales, and the cover designer apparently put like a hut, and it was like Scandinavian. Now there's no buildings like that in Wales with snow on, and it wasn't set. So that just reminded me of that. So it's like, yeah, you're completely wrong.
And then as a reader, like, you notice that stuff and you're like, what, who did this? What's the point of this? And you don't blame the author, but it definitely, like, if you resonate with a cover and then you read a book and it is nothing like the cover, you're more likely to dislike the book, even if it was a book that you would have enjoyed otherwise. And the same is the other way around. Like, if you think that the cover is like absolutely terrible, you might not pick up a book that you love, you know? And I think your cover just, it really, but basically, I feel like the scene where they are looking at the city is such a big one. And there are a few scenes like that, but it's such a huge, like, moment for them in their relationship, and also in her coming to terms with the fact that she loves.
Is it Primrose Hill? The view from Primrose Hill is very, like, I'm pretty sure it's that. It's very pretty. It's like, I've seen videos, like, not that I've ever been to that part of London, but I have seen videos and it is like gorgeous.
And I just feel like, you know, you look at it and it's not a cover where it's set right in the heart of the city, because that's not where, like, their confessions and stuff happen. Like, she first says to him, like, what happened at Christmas, when they're there, basically. And so it's like, it feels like, especially when you've read the book and you know what's happened, you look at the cover and you think, I understand, I get it, you know? And that's how it should be. Like, you should be able to actually feel like the cover relates. And I do think that's a really big benefit. And especially with your cover, like, I fully understand why. Was there anything else that you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I think there was one more question. So, like, because I'm quite interested in, like, people's self-publishing process, because it's very different. Did you find it, like, obviously you said that you were, like, wearing different hats and stuff. Was there ever a point, like, obviously with an adder and stuff, did you, like, put an advert out, or did you go, like, through websites or certain things to find artists or anything like that?
So I found the artist that I worked with, my brother actually knew him through, he's in like a chamber of commerce, so it's just like other business people in like our town and city, I guess. And he connected us, and it was actually this artist that I worked with, his name is Darius Kelly. This was his first book cover that he ever made. So it was kind of cool that we were like learning together, because I was like, I've never done this either, and this isn't his genre, so I had to be like, here's what I'm looking for, this is what will look good on shelves, and it was a lot of back and forth of both of us learning, which is a cool process. And I've already said, I'm like, I need you to do the next one if you want to. But I think it was a cool process for him too, to see, like, he mostly just does like ads and website design, to see like an actual book that's out in the world with his artwork on it. But yeah, that was how I found him. And then my editor was recommended to me. I just posted in like my local like Facebook group, like, hey, anyone know any editors? And someone recommended her, and she specializes in romance. So I was like, hey, let's work together.
Pretty perfect, to be fair.
Yeah.
Yes, but I did do a lot of like research before I started looking local, and I think for me, I just really wanted to have someone that I knew I could have like a connection with, and was equally passionate about my book as I was, because I knew that they would take good care of it when they're editing or working on the cover. And so that was a driving force for me too, with who I chose to work with.
I mean, it's pretty, yeah, it makes sense. I think that's like the biggest benefit of indie is like the personalization of the experience and the way that you get to connect with the actual community of creating books. It is special, and especially like for the first book that you've seen through and then published, it definitely speaks of the potential that you have for the future as a writer, but also, you know, if you choose to continue self-publishing, then like obviously it's only going to get better from here because you have those relationships.
I'd say your reviews have been pretty good as well. Like on Amazon especially, like your reviews are really good. So I think, like, what was I going to say? Are there any other plans to like do for your next book? Like, do you think it'll be a romance book or like a young adult as well?
Yeah, so I'm actually on draft 3 of the next book. I haven't really like put anything out there yet, but I do think it'll probably be ready by next year. But it is a romance. It's definitely more romance than London Leap. And it takes place again during that university age, but it takes place over 4 years, all 4 years of school. It's been a lot of fun to work on. I'm excited for it.
Is it a slow burn by any chance?
Absolutely.
I love slow burn.
I love a slow burn.
Sign me up for it. I love slow burns.
See, this is the thing as well, is like having heard her talk about the books that she struggled to read and like not enjoyed at all. You've definitely done a good job because she's been very animated talking about it.
Yeah,
okay. Makes me feel good.
I'm very like, I think the issue is university and stuff. Like when you're reading stuff and like you're writing and then you like being critical about your own writing, you just see, like you were mentioning earlier, you see it in everything. So like when I'm reading stuff, I'm like, I wish I had more of this. I wish I had more of that. And it's like, I can't get my head out of this, you know, especially because like, well, like doing a master's, it's like, oh, okay, I've got to be really critical now. So it's like, oh my God, it's like, weird.
And I think that in turn makes me so critical with my own books. I mean, I'm literally about to go edit this book after like this afternoon. And I just am nitpicking every single sentence. I'm like, this is so boring. And I don't know if it's just because I'm so critical and I've read this book so many times now. But
we are our own worst critics.
Yes.
The writer's curse, really. But I do think that it's very special to have published a book, especially your debut. And obviously, best of luck with the next project. Seeing it come out will be a very interesting thing for us. I guess, I mean, was there anything that you wanted to say? Anywhere that we can find you on social media or anything, just to make sure people...
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and TikTok, both as Samantha Kramerwrites.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, just to double check, you have no more questions?
No, I've got no more.
Okay. Well, it's been a little over an hour, so we'll say that's it. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it was lovely to have you.
Yeah, thank you. This has been so much fun.
And you should all, if you're listening still, as always, go check it out, please, The London Leap. It is available. It's available to buy.
On multiple platforms.
Yeah, so go read. Go read if you haven't already. You've been slightly spoiled, but who cares? It's worth it. Okay?
Bye.
Bye.